This is the measurements section. We're going to show you exactly how to measure your results and how to be consistent on a monthly, weekly basis, whatever you choose to do. If you decide to do it every month, every 2 weeks, so on and so forth, we're going to show you exactly what to do. Now, there's a couple of things you want to take note of. Number one, every time you take your results, you want to make sure that you're doing it under the same circumstances. Now, what I mean by this is that let's just say you're deciding to take it in the morning. Now, you want to make sure that when you take it in the morning, you're either deciding to never eat before taking your measurements, or if you eat breakfast and then taking your measurements, you want to do that. You want to make sure that when you replicate every time that you do your results, that you do it almost exactly the way you did it previously. You want to create a standard for yourself. Also, you want to make sure that maybe the night before, if in fact you do it in the morning, you want to make sure that alcohol consumption remains minimal, if any at all. Not only that, you want to make sure that you're eating foods that are not necessarily going to help you retain water. This is something that's going to definitely affect your results. But bottom line here is you want to make sure that you replicate the exact circumstances every time you take your results. The next thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that the interval in which you take your results are going to be consistent. So if you decide you want to do it every 2 weeks, do it every 2 weeks for an extended period of time. If you want to do it every month, which I recommend, make sure that it is consistent over time. These are the two biggest things that you want to do when taking your results. Before we begin, let's go through some of the tools that you're going to need in order to take your measurements over time. The first thing that you're going to need is a scale. Now, just because I'm starting with a scale does not mean that this metric is the most important. In fact, it's probably the least important. Whether it be pounds or kilograms, we're going to be measuring total mass. Number two, we're going to need measuring tape. Okay, we're going to be using this to measure our circumference measurements. We're going to be going through 5 different sites. Now, there are 2 different types of tape. The first type of tape is going to be one that you manipulate around your body, and it's just basically a piece of tape. The second one, which makes it a lot easier to do measurements on your own, is going to be one that allows you to hook itself to a digital counter. The third method of measurement is going to be body fat percentage. We're going to go through 2 different methods of measurement. It's going to be bioimpedance. The second is going to be body fat calipers, essentially where you're pinching skin folds. Before I forget, you want to make sure that wherever you're recording your results, you're recording them in one place, so that way we can basically look at everything and backtrack over time. If you want to take it to the next level and put your results in a spreadsheet, and that way you can actually graph them out and see them visually, I do that, and it's probably the best way you can do it. If you want to just get a journal, a separate book of some kind, and just write it down, that is fine also. So let's begin. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to step on a scale. Now, the biggest thing to keep in mind here is that every month, every bi-weekly, every week, whatever you decide, you want to make sure that you're using the same scale every time. We all know that different scales have different weights, and sometimes they're just calibrated differently. Make sure you're using the same scale. Pretty easy stuff. Number 2, we're going to do circumference measurements. Let's go through all 5 circumference measurements together and how to do them. The first circumference site that we're going to measure is going to be the chest area. Now, as we described before, there are 2 different types of measurement tape. There's one that is electronic, that is much easier to use by yourself, and then there's the regular measurement tape, which you can definitely still use by yourself. You just have to be very careful. Now, if you're doing it with somebody, let's go through exactly what we should be doing. So what you can do is, there's 2 different ways that you can do this. The first way is, the person who is being measured, you're going to hold the end of that tape measure on your nipple. Now, the person who is measuring you can either walk around your body, ensuring that the tape measure is parallel to the ground and is at nipple height, or they can stand still and you can spin around and they can just still make sure that the tape measure is parallel to the ground and it's at nipple height. You could do either way. If you're doing it by yourself, just ensure that the tape measure is parallel to the ground and that it's at nipple height. You can do it while looking in the mirror to ensure that this is the case. The second site is going to be your midsection. let's go to the tape. So the first thing that you're going to do if you're doing it with somebody is you're going to have the person who's being measured hold the tape on their belly button. Now, if you're doing it on your own, obviously just wrap it around your waist at belly button level. But like I've said, it makes it a lot easier to do it with somebody. Or if you're using one of those electric ones that actually hook on around, then you can actually just make sure that it's at belly button level. So let's take a look at the tape. There are two ways if you're doing it with somebody. The first way is going to be having the subject who's being measured spin, or the person who's doing the measuring, they're going around the individual, ensuring that it is straight. So let's take a look. So essentially, the person being measured, for holding it, they're going to put it on their belly button, and you can walk around them. Once that's done, take a look at what it says and record it immediately so you don't forget it. The other method is going to be have the person hold on to the actual tape measure on their belly button and have them spin around. It's a lot easier for the person who's measuring because they don't really have to do much. All they have to do is just make sure that the tape measure is level. The third site that we're going to measure is the hips. Now, when we look at the hips, we're going to have to start at a certain point, and it's going to be the same for everybody. Now, let's take a look at the pelvic girdle, specifically the ilium. Now, there's going to be a piece of the ilium that sticks out most in the body, okay? And that's going to be this piece right here. Now, everybody has it. Just make sure that you just feel around for it. And essentially what you're going to do is you're going to measure 6 inches below the peak point of the ilium. And that's the point in which you're going to start measuring around the hips. So let's take a look at the tape. So right here, you're going to feel around for that peak part of the ilium. Once you detect that, you're going to measure 6 inches down from it. That is the point in which you're going to start measurements around the hips. You can either ask the person to hold it for you and have them spin, or you can have them hold it and then you walk around the subject. Make sure that the tape is parallel to the ground. This is a very, very big deal. The fourth section you're going to measure is the quadricep. Essentially what you're going to do is you're going to measure 6 inches above the knee, and this is where you're going to take your circumference measurements for the quad. So let's take a look at the tape. So we're measuring 6 inches above the quad. Once you find that spot, hone in on it, take measurements, wrap it around the thigh. So essentially, the subject can't really spin around because, well, then that's not really going to help your measurements. And so just wrap it around. Make sure that that tape measure is not too tight, but tight enough that it actually stays on the person's quad. The fifth and final site you're going to take circumference measurements for is going to be the tricep. Essentially, you're going to measure 6 inches above the elbow, hone in on that site, and you're going to wrap it around their tricep. Let's take a look at the tape. So as you can see here, we're measuring 6 inches above the elbow. Once you find that spot, hone in on it and measure around the tricep at that site. The third method of measurement we're going to go through together is body fat percentage. Let's go through bioimpedance first. So essentially, all you're going to do is you're going to get this device or a device like it. Basically, they all have electrodes on it that detect the amount of water that is in the body. Once it detects the amount of water that's in the body, that number is going to be your muscle composition. The information that you put in the device is then going to subtract that muscle composition number from your total mass, and essentially this is how we get body fat percentage. Now, people worry, is this really accurate? The bottom line here is that if you take this measurement of bioimpedance consistent over time in the same circumstances, for instance, if you take it in the morning, if you take it on an empty stomach, if you're taking it with the same air pressure around you, I'm not really sure if that's true, but if you do it under the same circumstances, the amount that you either increase or decrease will always be accurate. Just make sure that the circumstances are consistent over time. These are body fat calipers. Now, if you're looking to take body fat percentage a little bit more seriously, these are going to be the more accurate measurement tool instead of bioimpedance. Essentially, it's just a piece of plastic with a measurement in millimeters. And essentially what you're going to do is you're going to pinch the skin in 3 different sites and you're going to measure in millimeters. Once you have those 3 values in millimeters, you're going to add them up And a chart that comes with the calipers is going to be able to tell you what your body fat percentage is. So what do we take away from this section? The biggest thing is going to be consistency. The more consistent you are, the more we can actually take these results seriously. If it's done every month to the T, that's fantastic. But if it's done every month in the morning on an empty stomach, well hydrated, and not going out the night before eating much or drinking much, then your results are going to be very, very accurate. Okay, the more consistent you are, the more accurate your results are going to be, and we can derive meaning from these results. If they're erratic, if 1 month you're doing it every 4 weeks and then the next you're doing it in 2 weeks, then we can't derive as much from those results. Make sure we are consistent. This section is huge, guys. You got to do it exactly as we have specified. Also, consistency is key. Let's move on. See you there. All right, so here we go. This is crunch time, baby. So the last sections that we've talked about so far, we've talked about content. We've talked about exactly what you're going to be eating, the exact percentages depending on your health status, the exact gram amounts in calories. We've been talking about all of the things that you're going to be putting in your body. Now we're going to be talking about what you should be doing when you're not eating food. This next section is about intermittent fasting, which is essentially going to make your keto adaptation occur quicker. It's also going to make your ketogenic life much more efficient when using ketones. It's going to give you a boost of energy unlike anything you've ever felt before. I know it sounds crazy, you not eating giving you energy, but hear me out. Let's go through it together. This is arguably the best tool when somebody is keto adapted. Let's get to it. See you there.